You know that incredibly uncomfortable feeling when you're typing an email at work
Yeah.
and you suddenly realize your manager is just standing right behind you?
Oh, yeah, just watching your screen over your shoulder.
Yes, your heart rate immediately spikes. You
Yeah.
suddenly misspell your own name and you completely forget how a keyboard even works.
It is a completely universal, visceral reaction. Yeah.
Right, because our brains are basically hardwired to view observation as a threat. Like, we instantly assume we're being judged, that someone is just waiting for us to make a mistake so they can pounce on it.
Well, scientifically, that is a classic amygdala hijack.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, the brain interprets being watched as a literal social threat, which triggers a fight or flight response. When we're observed, we automatically equate that with, inspection.
Right.
So the internal monologue instantly becomes, uh-oh, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, how can this person help me improve?
And nowhere is that tension more obvious, or honestly more damaging, than in a classroom. So today for this deep dive, we are looking at how to completely flip that script. We're decoding the arts of making people better at what they do.
This is a huge topic.
It is. And while our focus today is specifically on the classroom environment, I want you to know that the principles of feedback, growth, and leadership we're going to explore, they apply to you, the listener. Whether you are managing a corporate team, training a new hire, or, I don't know, just trying to help a friend learn a complex new skill.
Absolutely. Because anytime you step into a position of guiding someone else, you have to overcome that biological defensive response we just talked about.
Right. You have to prove you're there to support them, not to attack them.
Exactly.
So to help us navigate this, we have a really fascinating stack of materials today. We're pulling from this comprehensive presentation on instructional supervision by Mrs. Judlyn B. Alberca.
Yes, and that's grounded in the context of the Carlos Helado Memorial State University, specifically their College of Education in Negros Occidental in the Philippines.
Right. But we aren't just looking at academic theory here. To see how this works in absolute reality, we also have actual real-world classroom observation tools and compliance forms from St. Teresita's Academy in Silay City.
Which I love because it creates this perfect bridge.
Yeah.
Like, we get the high-level academic philosophy from the university level, but then it's paired with the on-the-ground practical instruments being used by actual principals and teachers every day.
It's the perfect mix. So here is the journey we've mapped out for you today. We're going to explore how leadership is shifting from that anxious, gotcha mindset to a genuine growth mindset. We'll look at how observation, feedback, coaching, mentoring, and data all interlock to totally transform teaching and human potential.
It's a really powerful shift.
It really is. But to ground us before we dive in, how are these sources defining instructional supervision in the first place? Because that sounds like a very dense academic term.
It does sound a bit formal, yeah. But Ms. Albertberger's presentation defines it as a continuous process of assisting, guiding, monitoring, and supporting teachers to improve instruction and student learning.
Okay, so a lot of action words there.
Right. But notice that it's not a singular event. It's an ongoing cycle. And the operative verbs are assisting and supporting.
Assisting and supporting, right.
It is inherently designed to build capacity, not to just document failure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can actually assist someone, we have to know where they stand, right? We have to observe them.
Naturally, yes.
But as we established with that email anxiety example earlier, the way we observe totally dictates whether we get a natural performance or a panicked one. And reading through these materials, it strikes me as, well, it's the fundamental difference between a health inspector and a personal trainer.
Oh, that captures the dynamic perfectly.
Right.
Yeah, a supervisor can literally choose which of those two roles they want to play, and the outcomes for the person being observed are radically different.
Well, think about it. Like, a health inspector walks into a restaurant looking for code violations. They want to find the rat droppings or the expired milk so they can shut the kitchen down.
It's purely punitive.
Exactly. It's punitive. You hide things from a health inspector. But a personal trainer, they stand there and watch you lift heavy weights, specifically so they can correct your form.
Right. They observe you so you don't tear a muscle.
And so you can eventually lift heavier. Like, you actually want them watching you because their entire goal is your success.
Yes. And Mrs. Alberca's presentation heavily advocates for that personal trainer model. In fact, the text explicitly outlines what observation is not intended for.
Oh, yeah, I remember that section.
Yeah, it says, it is not intended to find mistakes, it is not intended to intimidate teachers, and it is not just a tool to judge performance.
Because a supervisor, acting like a health inspector, just creates a culture of fear.
Exactly, which completely stifles innovation. Instead, the real purpose of observation is to understand the daily classroom realities, to identify a teacher's existing strengths, and, to figure out what support mechanisms they need to actually improve.
So the sources break this down into different methodologies. They discuss formal versus informal observation. And I mean, formal observation makes total sense to me. It's highly scheduled.
Very structured, yeah.
Like the principal emails a teacher and says, hey, I will be observing your grade 11 biology class next Tuesday at 9:00 a.m. The teacher prepares a full lesson plan, and it's this big showcase event.
Right. Everyone is on their best behavior.
But then you have informal observation.
Yeah.
The sources say this is unscheduled. It's just a short visit, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, where the supervisor just drops by unannounced.
Yep, just popping in.
But wait, doesn't that inherently cause that health inspector anxiety? If someone just materializes in my doorway while I'm working, how does the supervisor keep that from feeling like a trap?
It's a fair question, but the psychology behind the informal drop-in is actually about desensitization.
Desensitization. How so?
Well, think about it. If a principal only visits a classroom twice a year for formal evaluations, their presence becomes this high-stakes, terrifying event. The amygdala goes crazy.
If you never see them otherwise.
Right. But if that same principal drops in for 10 minutes every single week just to see the natural habitat, just to say hi, their presence becomes completely normalized.
Oh, I see.
The anxiety dissipates because the teacher realizes the supervisor is just checking the pulse of the school, not hunting for flaws.
They just become part of the furniture, in a good way.
Exactly that. And to ensure even the formal observations don't feel like an ambush, the sources outline a very specific narrative observation cycle. It completely removes the element of surprise.
Okay, let's walk through what that actually looks like in practice. Let's say our biology teacher is doing a really complex lab on cell observation. How does the cycle protect them?
Well, it starts before the supervisor ever even steps foot in the room with the pre-observation conference.
Wait, before the class even starts?
Yep. The supervisor and the teacher sit down together and discuss the lesson objectives, the teaching strategies, and the expected outcomes.
Okay, so setting the stage.
Right. So the teacher might say, look, this cell lab is going to be super noisy. The students are going to be moving around a lot, and they might struggle with the microscopes at first.
That is brilliant because it provides context. Like if the supervisor just walked into a noisy room where kids were struggling, they might just write it down as terrible classroom management.
Exactly. But because of the pre-conference, the supervisor knows that the friction is a planned part of the learning process.
Right, they know what to look for.
It completely aligns the observer's lens with the teacher's intention. Then, obviously, comes the actual classroom observation, where the supervisor watches the delivery and student participation.
And after that?
Following that is the post-observation conference. This is the crucial moment where they discuss strengths and areas for improvement, which leads directly to the final phase, which is continuous improvement.
Taking that post-conference feedback and actually putting it into practice. But, I mean, delivering that feedback is a total minefield.
Oh, it really is.
Even if a teacher knows they need to improve, hearing criticism can still trigger that massive defensive wall.
Which is why the presentation focuses so heavily on the neurological delivery of feedback. It has to be specific, objective, constructive, timely, and supportive.
That's a lot of adjectives.
It is, but the core formula they provide makes it simple. Praise first, suggest improvement, then encourage action.
Okay, that sounds a bit like the classic corporate compliment sandwich. But there's actual brain science behind why we have to do it this way, isn't there?
There really is. When a person hears immediate criticism, their brain releases cortisol, the stress hormone.
And that's bad for learning.
Very bad. Cortisol literally narrows your cognitive field. You stop processing complex information and just focus on defending yourself.
So you just shut down.
Basically, yeah. But by leading with genuine praise, highlighting something they actually did well, you trigger a dopamine release.
Ah, dopamine, the happy chemical.
Right. This keeps the prefrontal cortex engaged and open, meaning they can actually hear and process the constructive suggestion that follows without feeling attacked.
The materials give a really great contrast on this. They show an ineffective supervisor just saying, your teaching needs improvement.
I think it's just useless.
It is. It spikes the cortisol, but it gives the teachers zero actionable data.
Contrast that with the effective example from the text, which is, students actively participated during the discussion. To further improve engagement, consider using higher-order thinking questions.
Oh, that's so much better. Praise first. Students actively participated. Suggest improvement. Consider using higher-order thinking questions. Encourage action to further improve engagement.
It's highly specific and gives the teacher a clear, positive path forward.
And we see this philosophy hard-coded into the actual tools they use, too, like that classroom observation tool, or COT, from St. Teresa's Academy.
Oh, the St. Teresa's form is a masterclass in shifting the perspective of leadership. It forces the observer to evaluate the entire ecosystem, not just the individual standing at the whiteboard.
Yeah, that form really caught my eye. On one side, it rates teacher actions on a scale of 0 to 4. Things like time management and communicating expectations.
Standard stuff.
Right. But right next to it, it demands the observer rate student learning actions. Are the students actively engaged? Are they using technology appropriately? Are they sharing ideas?
Because it proves that teaching is not a performance art.
Exactly.
A teacher could deliver a theoretically flawless award-winning lecture, but if the students are just staring at the wall or completely confused, the teaching has failed.
Wow, yeah. By forcing the supervisor to evaluate the reception of the lesson, it sort of decouples the teacher's ego from the feedback.
Precisely. The conversation shifts from, "You are a bad speaker," to, "Hey, the students aren't capturing the information, so let's find a way to reach them."
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because once the supervisor has done the observation and they've successfully navigated the neurochemistry of feedback using that formula, what happens next?
I mean, after the meeting.
Yeah, like you can't just hand a professional 0 to 4 checklist, tell them to use higher order questions, and then disappear until next semester.
No, absolutely not.
That requires immense vulnerability on the part of the teacher to admit they need help and a whole system to actually provide it.
Because observation without follow-up is just inspection. The active support systems are what turn that observation into actual growth. And the presentation outlines two very distinct tracks of support here: coaching and mentoring.
And the sources draw a really hard line between the two, which I think a lot of organizations get wrong. They use the words interchangeably all the time.
They do constantly.
But to me, reading this, it reads like the difference between hiring a mechanic and learning from a veteran ship captain.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. Like coaching is bringing in a mechanic to fix a very specific engine knock. Mentoring is having a seasoned captain teach you how to read the weather, manage a mutinous crew, and navigate a lifelong career at sea.
That captures the scope perfectly. Coaching is highly tactical, it's short-term, it's specific, and it's skill-focused. It's driven purely by performance improvement on a single metric.
Yeah.
While mentoring is holistic, it's long-term, and it's career-focused. It's about overall professional development.
So in a school environment, if a teacher is, say, losing control of their class every day right after lunch, the kids are chaotic, the noise level is deafening. That is a specific engine knock.
Yes, and a coach steps in for that.
Uh-huh.
The coach's role is to observe that specific afternoon period, physically demonstrate classroom management techniques, provide immediate tactical suggestions, and then monitor the teacher's progress on that single goal.
Short and focused.
Right. Once the classroom is quiet, the coaching engagement is essentially complete.
But mentoring requires a much deeper level of trust, doesn't it? You can't just mandate a long-term relationship.
No, you really can't. Mentoring is usually a relationship where a veteran guides a novice through the unseen complexities of the job. Like, a newly hired teacher doesn't just need to know how to quiet a room.
Right, there's so much more to it.
They need to understand the school's unique culture, how to navigate complex administration policies, how to talk to difficult parents, and honestly, how to balance their own mental health. The mentor builds their confidence over years.
Now, looking at the St. Teresa's Academy materials, I noticed they have a heavily documented coaching and mentoring program compliance form.
Yes, very thorough.
It tracks the session goals, the specific topics discussed, and follow-up action steps. But if mentoring requires organic trust and vulnerability, like we just said, how does a school ensure this doesn't just become another bureaucratic box-picking exercise for an exhausted teacher? Because documentation usually kills organic relationships.
It's the perpetual danger of institutionalizing human development, for sure. But the St. Teresa's compliance form includes this brilliant safeguard against that.
What's the safeguard?
Right at the bottom of the form, there is a dedicated space for the teacher's reflection and feedback.
Oh. So it forces the teacher to write down their own thoughts on the session.
Exactly. What they actually found helpful and what they still need. It creates a mandatory two-way feedback loop.
That's incredibly smart.
Because without that section, a supervisor could just talk at a teacher for an hour, check the box, and claim they provided coaching.
Right, it would just be a lecture.
Yeah, but by requiring the teacher's written reflection, the form holds the supervisor accountable. It ensures the coach or mentor actually listened and facilitated a dialogue. It formalizes the support, but empowers the teacher with agency in their own development.
So we have this really comprehensive toolkit now. We know how to observe without triggering an anxiety attack. We know how to deliver feedback that the brain can actually process. And we have the 2 active tracks of support, tactical coaching and holistic mentoring.
Right.
But we have to introduce some reality here. Time and resources are finite. A principal cannot intensely coach 50 teachers at the same exact time. So how does a leader know who needs the mechanic and who needs the captain?
That requires stepping away from intuition and leaning into the final major supervisory process discussed in our sources, which is data-driven supervision.
So what does this all mean when we bring, spreadsheets into a conversation about human development? It sounds a bit cold.
Well, Ms. Alberca's presentation highlights a foundational philosophy for this entire concept that really grounds it. She says, without data, you just have opinions. With data, you have evidence-based decisions.
Wow. That is a phenomenal rule for business, education, and honestly just navigating life. Without data, you just have opinions.
Because it totally removes the bias. If a supervisor just feels like a teacher isn't doing well, that's an opinion colored by the supervisor's own mood, their preferences, or their blind spots.
Right.
Data ensures that limited resources are deployed based on objective reality. And crucially, in a school context, data is not just standardized test scores.
Which is the trap everyone always falls into, right?
Oh, sure.
Just looking at the test scores.
Exactly. The sources advocate for a highly holistic data set. It includes assessment results, yes, but also the observation reports we discussed, daily student attendance records, competency reports, and teacher evaluations. You collect all of this to find the patterns.
And the presentation lays out a 5-step narrative for doing this.
Yeah.
You collect all that diverse data. You analyze it to find the trends, like maybe noticing absences always spike on Fridays, or test scores only plummet in afternoon classes.
Right, you're looking for the story.
Then you identify the root problem, you build an improvement plan, and you monitor the progress. Let's actually look at the specific scenario Mrs. Alberca provides to see how this prevents the weaponization of data.
Okay, so the scenario presents 3 different sections of a class. Section Einstein has a mean score of 88, Section Newton is at 85, but Section Darwin has a mean score of 72.
Okay, so the data immediately flags the Darwin section. I mean, an 88 and an 85 are solid, but a 72 indicates a massive gap.
A huge gap.
And the presentation lists the resulting actions as observation, coaching, remediation, and monitoring. But I have to push back here for a second. Data is just numbers on a page.
True.
A 72 doesn't tell us why the gap exists. Maybe the Darwin section is scheduled at 2:30 p.m. when the kids are just completely drained.
Or maybe that specific room has a broken air conditioner.
Right. Or a higher number of students dealing with severe issues at home. If a supervisor just uses that 72 as a blunt instrument to punish the teacher, we're right back to the health inspector.
Yes, and that is the most critical juncture in the entire framework. If the principal walks in and says, your student's got a 72, you're failing, they have broken the trust, and the teacher will instantly go on the defensive.
They'll blame the time of day, they'll blame the textbook.
They'll blame the students.
The amygdala hijack returns.
Precisely. True data-driven supervision uses the number as a flashlight, not a verdict.
A flashlight, I love that.
It simply illuminates a spot in the building that needs closer attention. A skilled supervisor looks at that 72 and approaches the teacher with genuine curiosity, not judgment.
Right.
They say, let's look at this together. Sections Einstein and Newton are doing great. Section Darwin is struggling. What are you experiencing in that room? Let's figure out the root cause so I can get you the specific coaching or resources you need.
It becomes a collaborative puzzle to solve, rather than a top-down mandate.
Yes.
The 72 is just an objective, emotionally neutral fact. The why behind the 72 is what the supervisor and the teacher discover together through observation and reflection.
And it completely reframes the power dynamic. The supervisor and the teacher are basically standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at the problem together, rather than the supervisor standing across the desk, looking at the teacher as the problem.
This paints such a cohesive, powerful picture of human development. I mean, we started by redefining leadership, from catching mistakes to cultivating growth. We explored the neuroscience of observation and feedback. We separated the tactical mechanic of coaching from the holistic captain of mentoring.
We covered a lot.
We did. And we explored how data acts as a flashlight to guide the entire operation.
It really is a blueprint that goes far beyond the walls of Carlos Helado Memorial State University or St. Teresa's Academy, and Ms. Alberca synthesizes this philosophy beautifully in her closing thoughts.
What did she say?
She states, "The true purpose of supervision is not to inspect teachers, but to inspire them to become the best versions of themselves."
Moving from inspection to inspiration. That changes the entire goalpost of leadership.
It really does. It also redefines success for the leaders themselves. The presentation makes it clear. The measure of effective supervision is not the number of observation forms you filled out. It is the number of teachers empowered and the lives of the students transformed. As the text says, a great supervisor does not create followers. A great supervisor develops future leaders. Because ultimately, when teachers grow, students flourish.
When teachers grow, students flourish. It is a profound reminder that if you aggressively support the human beings doing the work, the quality of the work itself improves exponentially. We have just looked at a brilliant model for how educational institutions grow their people.
We have.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to look at your own environment. We talked a lot about the anxiety of human observation and the vulnerability required to accept coaching from a manager. But looking toward the horizon of the modern workplace, what happens when we remove the human element entirely?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine a scenario where an AI tool listens to your sales calls or analyzes your classroom audio and delivers perfectly objective, data-driven feedback based on best practices.
Just pure data.
Pure data. On one hand, it completely eliminates the health inspector, anxiety. There's no human ego, no judgment, just objective facts. But on the other hand, it also eliminates the personal trainer, the mentor who understands your bad days, who knows your unique context, and who builds your confidence over time.
You lose the connection.
Exactly. If
Yeah.
we rely on flawless, automated data to correct our mechanics, do we lose the messy human vulnerability that actually builds great leaders? Something to chew on the next time you are evaluating how to support the people around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.